Hello, and welcome to the beginning of what I hope to be a series on my Fix-It demos, Fix-It demonstrations for how I edit through my book, where I have different snippets from things down here, where I want to explain the editing process. Here's where I find a paragraph or a sentence or just some phrasing or some kind of error that if I were editing for someone else, I would want to fix, and I would have these footnotes for them. But since I'm editing for myself in this case, this is my third revision. Usually I would not, leave footnotes for myself, but this is kind of a documentation on how do I go through the editing process, and also showing a little bit about the skills, because you really just need a ton of exposure to a ton of different situations to find out what makes for good writing and what slows down things. I have some of my goals where my goal is 5,000 words a day, and I'm being really inconsistent, not in achieving 5,000 words, but in achieving it just for the one project that I'm doing, because I would want to write about different themes and different ideas. And I'd be writing across 5 books and 1,000 words for 5 books. So that's still a whole lot of productivity going on there. But it's not directed in an actionable way. But nevertheless, I've collected a ton of data on my writing statistics, and I average around 20 words per minute. That's like a good session. Some of this slower, quote unquote, slower stuff would be about 15 words per minute, especially for drafting stuff that's very visual, because when I write visuals, that tends to slow things down. If I'm just doing dialogue and I have a couple of scenes, a couple of chapters that are done like text messages, or done like talking back and forth on the internet where it's just text, where those go much, much faster. I'm thinking about doing a book that's just in that style or that format, where it's more like a play where you have each character talking, because that is my highest work productivity, around 27 words per minute. If I basically don't have dialogue tags, don't screw around with that, and I'm just focused on the dialogue itself. Regardless, I have 3 sessions that go for 90 minutes each. And so the 4.5 here is how many hours I would have, because a 90-minute session is 1.5 hours. So that's 270 minutes in a quote-unquote complete workday. But I only work for 270 minutes out of a day. That's still significant if you're doing this as a hobby or something. This also puts me around 1,000 words per hour. It's a little more than that. So here's the specific number that this is what my goal is for getting 5,000 words out of 270 minutes is 18.52, rounding up there. Words per minute is my goal when I'm doing my calculations. Okay, this is like Spurgy and going into details. Yeah, well, why are you talking about all these boring things? Because I want to have clear objectives for what is good work in a session, on a session-by-session basis. I want to go, was this a good session? Have I achieved different goals on the very, very short term of I've done 90 minutes of work? How good was this? And there's something else to add on top of that, is editing out words, because sometimes it's very important to remove paragraphs. That's something that I kind of keep in the back of my head if I really wanted to like hyperfixate on this word count. I would add the deleted words to my word count, because I'm still reading through them when I'm editing. And yeah, it's much faster when I identify a chunk of exchanges that I have to cut out. It's easier to read through that and cut it all out than to write something, to draft something anew to replace that. And a lot of times, because I add about 20% on top of things, and I should put that here, I get about 20% more words on the second draft. Once I do the third draft, then it's like, okay, let's stop doing any heavy edits, and this is just small grammatical things, because at that point you just want to bloody get published, and I'm kind of violating that rule because it'd been so long since I revisited Munera, which is the current book that I am trying to get published. So I have about 20% increase. So if I had 1,000 words, then I would have 1,200 in that chapter. That is just like my style of it. I've drafted over 14 books now. I have edited like 5 of them, and this is pretty consistent for me. I have statistics collected on how is my behavior, what can I expect for statistical outcomes on general prose. And the style that I like the most, the reason why I'm not just focusing on get as many words out there as possible, because if strictly speaking, if I wanted to do that, then I would just write in a play like style of character A says this, character B says that, because dialogue is what I write the fastest. I don't think that stylistically like flows for giving a full narrative the way that there's a balance between dialogue and action and description and suspense and all these things, where there's a lot of atmosphere that you really struggle to convey in just dialogue, where I like having that. I like expressing certain things through atmosphere, and we'll get into some examples of that. So that has been the intro to just doing some statistics here, and in the next recording here, I will actually start talking about the demonstrations here. So this is just some of my goals. It's very important to have set concrete goals so that you can compare your growth over time. Now, I've heard of things of people getting 5,000 words in an hour by like talking out their book, and I can't do that. But it's a complete different paradigm of how I speak, and you can even hear that I'm not the most flowing and charismatic in how I say things out loud. The way that I write is not the way that I talk, strictly speaking. Mostly you want to write the way that a real person would talk, so that you have like genuine dialogue, but that's not necessarily what you want to emulate when you're trying to describe atmosphere and all that. And we'll get into some examples of that, because there's like poetic things that you would never say out loud, that doesn't show up out loud. But when you sit down and you have the time to think about it, especially if you go back and revisit it and you have a mood established, you have themes established for what the book is supposed to be like, you have an atmosphere that's there, and when you revisit it and you have all the scenes together when you're looking through the edits, then you can get a better feel for how to refine that. And that refinement is something that does not happen just verbally by speaking into a microphone, but explanation can absolutely be expedited, or expediting explanation through verbally going through things here. Okay, so in the next episode, I will actually start going into the Fix It demos. Sorry that there wasn't much happening on the screen here, but we will get on with it in what I hope to be a very happy, healthy, and successful series. Thank you for listening.